Okay. Are employees that have tested negative required to quarantine for 14 days after their exposure to the infected person?
Yeah, so if they're a close contact, the negative test only gives us a point in time. We know they're negative when they had that test collected, but they could still develop the disease and be infectious after that. So even if they test negative, they still need to continue their quarantine and finish out their 14 days.
Is there a requirement of how big the social distancing panels should be between tables or employees working in a small area in the back of the kitchen?
So this is a tough question because again, with the guidelines, when the whole language about barriers was released, it never gave a performance standard for what a minimum barrier looks like, right? So I think Washington Labor and Industry came out with an opinion recently about at least 6 feet high, but I don't know that it talked about width at all. But here's what I would tell restaurant operators. So let's say you have back-to-back booths. Imagine like a restaurant like an IHOP or something where you have, I think they have back-to-back booths, and then there's a space, right? There's kind of that space there. I would say putting up, so from the floor to the top of the barrier, probably a good height to shoot for is about 6 feet. So when you think about the average height of a human, and you think about like sneeze guards on buffets and stuff, those dimensions for sneeze guards come from FDA recommendations based on the average height of a human male, I guess, being 6 feet. So I apply that when operators ask about, what's a good height? Well, the good thing with booths is people will be sitting, right? And they'll be facing each other across the table. So if they coughed or sneezed, with barriers that are at least 6 feet high between those booths, that's probably sufficient. And then, sufficiently wide to just be spaced in the gap. That's probably, although not a guarantee, at least a barrier that's going to inhibit, hopefully, any airborne virus from affecting folks in adjacent booths. But unfortunately, there's not a clear standard when it comes to dimensions, because some other things now that are really starting to be talked about seriously are the mechanical system within your space. So think about your fresh air, your makeup air, the amount of air that's turned over. Back in the kitchen, think about hoods over your cooking equipment. So now the big recommendation is make sure, to the extent possible, that your HVAC system is maintained and operating so that you're getting the proper air turnover. But that may entail working with someone who's an expert in that area, or reaching out to a local building official who would be a regulatory expert in that area for specific questions. Most of us in the public health, environmental health world, we're not mechanical experts. We just can tell you generically, you need to have a good, you need to maximize your HVAC system. That doesn't mean a lot when you're looking for specifics, but that's also, I think, an important factor here, is certainly as more information comes out about how this virus interacts with air. Once it's expelled from a human, for example, how long does it linger in the air? And there's probably a lot of what ifs. What is the temperature and air turnover, and all these sorts of things. So that's kind of deviating a little bit from the question of barriers, but I would say barriers in combination with a well-working ventilation system definitely are a benefit. And it's case by case. So each restaurant is unique, right? For the most part, unless you happen to be a large corporate chain in which it's the exact same footprint everywhere you go. But I mean, most of us know that restaurants are unique, and they're unique spaces, and the way the seating is set up is unique. So, barriers aren't necessarily a